women were looked after more.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I think it helped. Basically, I think the internet has really helped women surfing, because all these people that have had a voice haven't been able to say it without the internet.
Right.
And then, with the internet, those two young kids in South Africa, when they saw the checks of each of them, everybody went through the roof and went, oh my God, like, the guys are getting 3 times actually it was double the price of the women.
Right.
And, the amount of comments, there was thousands and thousands of comments. And I'm like, oh my God, everyone only just noticed? This has been going on forever. But it's finally through a platform like that.
Right. When you could see the two checks side by side, and then the two competitors side by side, and you're like, what, how is this even possible?
Because of that event, that made WSL really think about where they're at and what they want.
Right.
And so then they announced equal prize money. And
because there was pushback before, I think there was a story about the women up in Northern California, who I think is the big wave surfers, who wanted to compete at Mavericks, and they would not do this, and then so
they made it so you had to have women.
Right. And then I think they used the state laws because it's on state parks property, that it couldn't discriminate based on gender. So they used that, but the WSL still pushed back. And I think it was that picture of those two grommets that raised an outcry.
Yeah, it's touched on in the film, that part.
It's sad that it took public pressure and it took like a public shaming in order for these things to happen. Like, it's not common sense. It's almost like they had to see what the barometer of the world, where they stand on equal rights.
But again, like I said, the internet has done wonders for women around the world in general, because, like that saying that they have, it's in the movie as well, if you can't see it, you can't be it.
Right.
Well, now that with the internet, everyone, and Instagram, everyone has that opportunity to see what each other are doing.
Absolutely.
And like when I was a kid, we were lucky to ever find a magazine with a woman in it. So I'm surprised that I became a surfer, because I was lucky. I had one friend at school that did it, and I wanted to just surf with her. So, and then her vision was she had a lovely uncle that took her surfing. And so at the moment, through the film and, being the only world champion to come out of Bondi Beach, we're really pushing to get a statue down there.
Yes, I see. And I really hope that happens. That would be so amazing to see.
For me, it's really important, not just because it's me, it's really important because kids look up to something that they see. And for me, I'd really love that. A plaque would be great, but what kids look at plaques, you know what I mean? So that to me is sort of for the adults. But if you had a statue there, the kids are going to go, who's that?
Right.
Especially if you have your surfboard under your arm, they're going to go, oh, I want to have a look.
Yeah.
And I think only 10% of statues in Australia are of women. So
I think it's less than that. And then I heard that it's like 3% of that small amount, or of, English royalties.
Wow. Yeah. Ridiculous. So anyway, they need more.
Yeah, exactly. Another facet I want to touch upon was in the film, they referenced the 1999 South African, competition where you staged or you organized the women to sit out because the conditions were so bad and it was nothing you could really compete in or even surf in. And I wondered what that moment was like for you, because, in sports, it has so much to do with your own individual, ability and merits. And in this instance, in order to change the sport, you had to act collectively. And I think that's a really, really important part of, so many stories, like when you organize, especially as women, to demand change. And did you know at that moment, that it was a big deal? What did you see changes as a result, even on the short term, or at least within the athletes themselves?
I didn't. It wasn't that easy. The movie makes out like that was the first time I actually was able to get everybody to do it.
Wow.
I said it a few times. I didn't actually organize it. What would happen is just before we paddle out, it would be really, really shit. And I'm like, let's just not paddle out.
Right.
If we all don't paddle out, they can't make us, no one will win.
Right.
And then there was a few events, like one in France. I remember the girl that was sponsored by the sponsor of the event got pressured by a sponsor. So then we all had to quickly go out because she went out.
Mm-hmm.
But then in South Africa, it was the perfect time where everybody's like, yeah, let's just not go out.
Wow.
And so everyone was nervous because, you know, we used to get fined for sticking up for ourselves.
Wow.
So there's another instance that wasn't in the movie where there was a sponsor in America, and when I got up on stage, I came second, and I said, you know, I really hope the contest gets bigger and better next year. And the reason I said that was the guys had like a 6-star event and we had a 1-star. And so, you know, the prize money was, I think, $1,000 for first, $500 for second. And the men's was like, because it was a 6-star event, 20,000 or something, and 10 for second. And it was the truth. You know, I spoke the truth. I just said, I hope it gets bigger and better next year.
Right.
And I was told by the contest director that I needed to go and apologize to the sponsor.
Wow.
And so, and they said, if you don't, you're going to get fined for what you said. So I went up to the sponsor and I said, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm going to get fined. I'm going to get fined way more than I even won in this event, just because I've been told I need to apologize to you. And I said, I can't apologize to you because it cost me $3,000 to get here on a flight.
Right.
It cost me $500 for my car. It cost me $500 for my accommodation. And I just won $500. And I went up on stage and told the truth. And he said, oh, look, I'm not going to tell them that you didn't apologize, but we just spent $1 million plus setting up this contest. And I said, well, what about the female athletes? You know, you're spending $1 million on this contest area. We're the ones that are bringing in the crowds as well as the guys. And it was never ending stories like that of just fighting and like being scared that we're going to get fined for speaking up. And so in the end, I didn't care. And, you know, even at one stage when Lisa was married to the head judge, we're just like, you know, the head judge has got to step down. He can't judge us if you've got a child to him. And so there was lots of things like that happened where he did stand down, but the judges were still, he was their boss. You know what I mean? So there was lots of little things like that we were never ending fighting for. So like you said, because that was all part of the sport, we didn't know any different. It was like, you know, we just had to be feisty. Like even one time the girl surfers had a meeting and said, oh, you know, we need to talk to the judges that we're not happy. And then he came into the meeting and he said, you know, I'll be honest, girls, you girls never tell us when we do something wrong except for Pauline. She comes in and like blows up at us, you know, what we should and shouldn't be doing. And that's what you all should be doing.
Right.
And so I didn't even think anything of it. I guess, again, from having brothers and where I grew up, it's like, if someone does something wrong, you
call it out. You just do it. Yeah.
And again, like I didn't think it was a big deal until, you know, you see it in the movie and I go, yeah, actually, wow, we did put up with a lot of shit and we did fight. And then it made me realize, yeah, you know, we did do a lot. And the generation now really do need to see what we put up with.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very clear, and the movie makes it very clear that you paved the way. There's no way that things can be the way they are right now in the WSL and the women competing if it weren't for you. The fact that it's a sport that's going to be on the Olympics this year, seeing women compete at that level, there's absolutely no way.
You heard my story, but there's also stories of the women before us who had the same kind of thing.
I really hope this film is just the opening. I hope that more people will, you know, open up and tell those stories, because there's so many stories that haven't been told, especially of that generation.
Well, you know, what's been really wonderful is like the amount of teenage boys that are just absolutely awesome. Like there's even like a teacher that I met that took the whole, you know, this troublesome class to it. And after they saw it, they were really, really touched by it. And then they had a completely different outlook. And she said it seriously changed the way of thinking. And so, you know, I even had a 14-year-old boy come up to me and said, oh, I just love that movie. It was so good. And she goes, I've never seen my mum this happy in years. And then he said, like, he took a photo of me and his mum and he said, Mum, look how happy you look. Like, you just look so happy. And then he said, I've only ever watched Stephanie Gilmore and Sally Fitzgibbons, and that's because I've met them. He said, now after watching this movie, I just want to watch everybody.
That's beautiful.
And so, you keep hearing stories like that. You just realize how much of an impact this movie has.
Right. Let me ask you something, because of, movies have an impact and reach. What was it like for you when I'm assuming you were a kid, when Puberty Blues came out? It seems like it's a cult film. It's always kind of referenced to me as far as what it was like back then. Did that film resonate for you at all, or did you see it when you were a kid?
I saw it when I was a bit older, but I just thought it was cool just to have women in it. I didn't really think about how it was, but just because surfing was cool, and I just remember thinking it was awesome that there was just a surfing film, really.
Right. I mean, I think the final scene of it, when the girls get the surfboard and they go out, like that's such a great moment in the film. But I think films have that ability to kind of reach out to a wider audience. And I think it's really important, again, back to, if you can't see it, you can't be it. And just to be able to see it is to be able to acknowledge that it exists and is possible. And then also to use that as a foundation to kind of launch from. And you see with every generation of surfers, they also evolve in their styles and what they can do. And I think that's because of what's come before them and what they see.
Yeah. And, that was a never ending fight. Like, we fought so hard. Like, even when I was sponsored by Piping Hot, I'm like, please, can you make some girls' clothes?
Oh, yeah.
And you hear the comment of Robbie Bain, like that was how they were back then. They're like, why are these women coming and wanting to take our men's clothing company? It's like, they really thought that they were above us. And, I'm not going to mention names, but there was even certain coaches that are coaching now that hated the women surfers, and they used to cross the road just to avoid eye contact or whatever. Wow. And now they talk to all the women, they're coaching the women. God. And I'm like, oh my wow, what a change.
Wow, you should name names.
It was just, no, I'm not going to name names, but I was really, really surprised that to see them talk to women now, and it's and coach them. I was like, oh my God, I can't believe it.
Yeah, they're basically making a living from it now. They're cashing out on it.
Exactly.
And I think it's important. I think a lot of companies, they're so easy to kind of shift because they can cash out on things. And I think about representation, and that's something I also wanted to talk to you about. I think, is your mother Chinese, of Chinese descent?
No, but it's quite funny, that story, because my grandmother always told my mum that my father was Mongolian and Portuguese. So it's that Mongolian look, I thought. And then not long before my grandmother died, she said, oh no, your father was Chinese. And then I did a bit more research, but I still think he was Mongolian Portuguese. Just, I can't remember his surname right now, but my partner helped me do all the research, and she said, no, she reckons he's definitely got, because he had a Portuguese last name.
At any point, did you identify as Australian Asian
Australian?
Well,
it's funny, because I never thought about it till I got older. And the older I'm getting, the more Asian I'm looking. And it was a dentist that said to me, what Asian background have you got? And this was probably when I was about 25. And I said, what do you mean, what Asian background have I got? And I actually never saw a photo of my real grandfather. My grandmother had remarried. And so I didn't even know she remarried. And then when I said to my mum, so is that my grandfather? She said, no. I went, oh, well, who is? And then she brought out a photo, and this guy totally looked Asian. And I went, oh, the dentist said I've got Asian teeth. And now I see this photo of him. Now I'm seeing, like, yeah, I do look quite Asian.
Your teeth. That's interesting. I had no idea you could tell.
Yeah, okay, so your teeth, right? See how they go inwards? See how they curve? Touch your teeth.
I think so. Yeah.
So your front teeth, if they curve, he said that's Asian teeth. And I'm like, well, that says it all.
That is a really funny kind of a point of access to identifying someone's Asianness.
I know, but he said that's true. It said that's totally Asian teeth.
Yeah, I just wonder, because it seems like race is something that isn't really talked about here, and even in terms of like any kind of discrimination. But I do feel like there is some discrimination, or at least it's coded, even, I think about your sponsorship years or your inability to get a sponsor because you didn't maybe have that look that they were looking for in terms of sponsorship. And, it's, when one thinks of someone who's Australian, you think of someone who's blonde and blue-eyed and, white. And it's a very specific and very narrow vision of what, women look like. It's